Welcome back to the Global Business Report on Arise News. Let's talk online streaming and the strategy of Netflix. There's been a lot of chatter around the company's decision to release Knives Out 2, aka Glass Onion, a Knives Out mystery, for a limited time in theaters ahead of its debut this month on Netflix. Taking a look at the numbers, Netflix had its best theatrical launch ever for Thanksgiving with Glass Onion, a Knives Out mystery, making $13.2 million over the Thanksgiving break. Many say Netflix should have released the film in more theaters for a longer time and possibly left a $400 million global run on the table. Joining us to discuss further is film reporter for The Wrap, Scott Mendelson. Good morning, Scott. Thank you so much for joining us. I know it's really early in California right now. So we're looking at the performance of the first Knives Out film, 2019, $300 million gross. Are you in the camp that says Netflix left money on the table with the Knives Out 2 limited release?
Yes. First of all, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Yes, I do think, without getting into good and evil, smart, not smart, or whatever, I think objectively speaking, had they treated Knives Out or Green Onion, Glass Onion, a Knives Out mystery as a conventional theatrical release akin to Knives Out, I do think they would have earned in theatrical revenue something on par with the first film's $312 million gross. The first film was a huge hit, got rave reviews. It was leggy as hell. That means it stayed in theaters for a long time. People weren't just running out an opening weekend and then forgetting about it. It's the kind of film that, because it was a surprise smash, because people discovered it over the long haul, because lots of people discovered it both well into its theatrical debut and, on DVD, streaming, VOD, cable, whatever, there was earned goodwill for the sequel. So what usually happens in a theatrical environment, you have a sequel to a film like that, where everybody that saw the film over the course of the last, its theatrical run and its post-theatrical run, they all rush to the theaters on opening weekend, and you end up with potentially a much bigger global box office gross. Now, that's not to say that Knives Out 2 would have done insanely more than the first one. It's a case-by-case basis, but in a normal situation, I am very hard-pressed to wonder why Knives Out 2 wouldn't have done as well as Knives Out 1 in theaters. Now, there's a marketing spend to take into account, but money is money, and revenue is revenue. And in terms of the, 15-25 million worldwide they're probably going to make from theatrical versus the 300 to 400 they could have, yes, that's money on the table, absolutely.
Thanks, Scott. Looking at the third quarter revenue for Netflix, though, I think the company brought in almost $8 billion, added about 2.4 million subscribers. Does a possible worldwide $400 million gross mean that much to Netflix?
No, you are correct. It could be argued that it's just a drop in the bucket. However, revenue is revenue. And when it comes to the whole theatrical versus streaming conversation, one thing that comes to mind for me is that these are films that have already been made. These are films where the production budget is already accounted for. So the only extra money you're spending is a bigger and more expensive theatrical marketing campaign versus a streaming campaign. The extent that I'm not going to say Netflix doesn't market their stuff, because they know what they're doing for their own product. Sometimes just having that little thumbnail on the front page on Friday morning is enough to turn it into a hit. That said, again, if wherever the math is in terms of if they spend $100 million theatrically marketing the picture worldwide, and then it brings in 300 to 400 million in just raw revenue, after whatever the theaters get back, there is probably a few $100 million that they would have had for a product that they already made that they now don't have. And if I might, no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Let's say, if I may digress, we've seen over the last 2 years that films that do well in theaters do not suffer when they come to streaming. The Batman was a huge hit in theaters. It did great on HBO Max. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, Free Guy, Doctor Strange 2, Thor 4. These were all films that did very well at the worldwide box office over the last couple of years. And when they came to Disney Plus, they were still big streaming successes. Even Lightyear, which bombed at the box office this summer, it still posted a very solid opening weekend on Disney Plus. It went on and on and on. So I think the fear that making the film into a big theatrical blockbuster would mitigate or lessen its value as a streaming property, which of course Netflix is a streaming company. That's where they expect most of their product to be viewed upon, and that's fine. I think that's a false fear. And I think especially with a film like Knives Out 2, which is a puzzle box whodunit of a movie, there is an incentive for multiple viewings. So, if I may, speculate or, conjecture, I imagine most people that saw the film in theaters and liked the film in theaters will probably watch it again when it comes onto Netflix in late December, either for their own pleasure or to share with somebody that didn't see it in theaters.
Gotcha.
Because there's lots of, I get this clue that I didn't get before, or, now it all makes sense now. Ha ha ha. The first Knives Out, which I liked quite a bit, benefited quite a bit from a second and third viewing. And I've only seen The Last Onion once, but I have to assume the same for this one.
Gotcha. As far as spending, with Netflix outlays for both Knives Out sequels coming out to about $450 million, do you think they would have made their money back if they put them in theaters?
I don't think so, 1-to-1 here. However, when Netflix did what they did in 2020, and again, this is not good and evil. This is, they're all giant companies here. They, I would argue, overspent gratuitously as a show of force. This was during a time when their stock was on the rise. Every company in Hollywood was being sort of forced by Wall Street to be like Netflix, and Netflix could do no wrong, blah, blah, blah. This was a show of force to say, we have this money, we can spend this money, we want this property, and as a bonus, we're going to take a very promising theatrical franchise off the table and turn it into a piece of streaming content. And again, not good and evil. I might roll my eyes at Rian Johnson taking the deal, but I wouldn't have turned down that money. I don't think most of us, watching or listening to this would have done so either. $450 million, and that includes allegedly around $100 million a pop just for Johnson and just for Daniel Craig, and God knows how much else for the other, producers and what have you. Yeah, I would have taken that money too. But I think at the time it was an intentional overspend. Basically because we can.
Great stuff. Scott, we're out of time, but we have to have you back to talk more box office in the future. Scott Mendelson, film reporter with The Wrap. Thank you so much. We appreciate your time.